recording going here. I want to get a recording here.
That, folks, you can go to my Facebook page, which is Phoenix Speaks #1. Phoenix Speaks #1. Like the page, and you could comment or post on it.
Okay, the phone number here to call in on is 646-915-8774. 646.
I got that. Okay.
915-8774. And let's see here, what do we got here? Big Motorcycle. Do I have a toll-free number? No, I don't have a fucking toll-free number. Well, there's your Jew in the woodwork. There's your Jew in the woodwork.
Give me a minute, Clay. I gotta put some coffee. Hold on. You talk. I gotta get coffee. Hey, Clay, before I walk away to get coffee, how'd you like that key?
Okay, I couldn't hear you on that. Now, what I had planned on doing was doing an update probably once a week. And instead of waiting until the book comes out, like Mystery Babylon, and you can get Mystery Babylon, $40 for a hard copy, $10 for a PDF. And I have on August 26th, I added something to it. Now remember what I just said. I've been doing nothing wrong. Everything Alex Jones is doing is what I started 20 years ago, what I was doing 15 years ago with a Free American, with this radio show. He's got his own radio show. He was on Genesis. They stole the equipment for Genesis. I was there when they did it. I was trying to help the people who really owned it, Mark Cornke. They stole it from Mark Cornke and others. And then he came out with Infowars.com, a little paper magazine run by a Jew. And
I'm back.
Okay, on August 26th, I said my life approached what might qualify for normal up until May 20th, 2004, and for brief periods after that fateful day. Perhaps the path I chose to continue my radio show rather than concentrate on my magazine or writing for other publication was an error. I have speculated that referring to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning was a tactical error. Putting building on the number 7 on the cover of my March issue with Silverstein's admission that he pulled the building could have been a little audacious to an outsider. The breakup of my family could have appeared like an ongoing family squabble. Maybe it was, but one of the things that made up my personal nightmare was still hovering around just outside my range of vision, like Casper's evil brothers. It bothered me for 10 years, and it bothered me like last weekend. I called my ex-wife, Janet, to ask why Barrow Institute kept me drugged for so long. Severe head injury, they told me. Echoing the party line. Okay, I said, thanks. Then before I could hang up, she added those words that infuriated me so much 10 years ago. I love you. 10 years ago, I would have been chewing on the phone and screaming, if you love me, why aren't you here? But that was then. Today I have the VA treating me for PTSD, whether that stems from that sergeant trying to kill me with spinal meningitis or the CIA 10 years ago, who knows. Nightmares tend to blend together. Today I have a lady I believe cares, but the cousin of Casper still pops up now and then. And that usually boils down to a lack of money. So I just go into the other room, eat a handful of the VA prescribed Depakote to stabilize my mood and keep me from flying into a rage or hurting people. It works sometimes. I try to write and continue my radio show, but what used to work doesn't seem to work anymore. My guests are still good. The guest I had on a few days ago had some good news. Paul Pantone was robbed yesterday and threatened that if he brought his Geet device out, he'd be hurt. Too late. Paul was not injured, and the foreign financing came through for Paul the day before yesterday's guest. Also in the field of alternate energy, couldn't get on the air. I filled in with a black guy who was talking about growing food on vacant lots in South LA. He made a lot of sense.
I have that video.
Beg your
on
pardon?
Brass Check TV.
You got that up?
I'm going to put it up. I just got it emailed to me from Brass Check. I always put the news from Brass Check up.
Yeah, his name's Ron Finley, and I've got it up on my
Yeah, man, that's the guy.
He says growing your own food is like printing your own money. And as I was about to feel sorry for myself again, I realized I have done nothing wrong. You have. Like your parents and grandparents before you, you've been deceived by the liars and that your Messiah tried to warn you about. If you do not want to believe me, try believing Jesus, whom they killed. John 8:44, the children of the devil, why do you not understand what I am saying? It is because you cannot hear my word. You are of your father the devil, because you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I speak the truth, you do not believe me. Remember, the Mossad's motto is warfare through deception. I saw what happened in Waco when a church and 17 little children and their parents were murdered. I started the Free American radio show. I started the militia, pulled from your Constitution and Bill of Rights to protect you. It was the ADL, formed after the rape and murder of Mary Fagan, to get the Jew Leo Frank set free after he was found guilty by a jury of his peers. He was then hung by the state of Georgia's leading citizens. I started the Free American and had it in bookstores all over the states. I promoted the magazine, and a lot of other authors and inventors at the Preparedness Expos. When they went out of business, I started the Free American Expos in Dallas, Mesquite actually, Fort Worth, and Atlanta. Got arrested at the last one for supposedly stealing a generator that was shipped but never paid for from a state I had never been in. None of that stopped me or even slowed me down. Then when my phone was tapped by one of two Israeli companies George Bush liked, the details of my accident are in Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled. My co-author, Eli James, will be with me this next Monday, the August 31st. But perhaps my problems really started at my last expo, when I allowed Alex Jones to have a booth and speak We were at Denny's, and I asked him if he ever considered that his girlfriend at the time, Violet, had been slipped in on him by the Mossad. He has never spoken to me since. When you see the benefits listed below, you can hardly blame Alex. That's why I blame you. Your grandparents and parents allowed Roosevelt to send your uncles and fathers to war with Germans. My family was German. You allowed Roosevelt to steal your gold. While the Jews do this while laughing at how gullible us Goyim are. Read the protocols now. How many Americans support the Free American? No one speaks up. No one wants to be called anti-Semitic, a game they always play. And I'll do this again on Monday because I want you to understand the game is rigged. The deck is stacked. Alex Jones married to a Jewish woman named Violet Nichols, with whom he has 3 children. They are all qualify for Israeli citizenship under Israel's law of return. Alex Jones is funded by at least 34 Jewish sponsors and advertisers who financially support his radio show and websites. Alex Jones' flagship radio station, KLBJ-AM in Austin, Texas, is owned by Ennis Communications, a media conglomerate based in Indianapolis, Indiana. The founder, chairman, president, and CEO of Ennis Communication is the Zionist Jew Jeffrey Simulon. Alex Jones' radio show is broadcast on Sirius XM Radio. The chairman of Sirius Radio is the Jew Eddie Hartenstein. The CEO of Sirius is the Jew Mel Karmazon. The president of Sirius XM Radio is the Jew Scott Greenstein. Of the 6 executive officers of Sirius Radio, 5 are Jews. Alex Jones employs a Jewish attorney named Elizabeth Morgan, who is also employed by Holly Lev Brofman, the sister of Edgar Brofman Jr. There are only 2 degrees of separation between Alex Jones and the Brofman family, one of the wealthiest and most influential Zionist families in America. Alex Jones' employee, Molly Morani, is the managing editor of InfoWars magazine, a former intern of Stratfor, a private intelligence agency based in Austin, Texas, which has been linked to the CIA and Mossad. The founder and CEO of Stratford is the Zionist Jew George Friedman. There are only 2 degrees of separation between Alex Jones and Stratford. And I got to add this. After I published that story, I got this from my son. Maybe I can find it. Basically, he called me on the carpet for exposing these Jews. Doesn't want to have anything to do with me again. And he said, this is a ridiculous letter, if that's what you want to call it. What the fuck is the point? You just tried to make all of us look like shit, but actually made yourself look like a babbling idiot. Congratulations. Also, don't think that's the right way to go about bashing every Jew in America. No one wants to hear about your fucked up life you created for yourself. Quit trying to be a patriot and start being a grandpa, hopefully with some decency. Leave me out of any of these fucked up emails too. Thanks. And I responded, I once had a following. After you stole everything I had built, you moved to Colorado and abandoned me. You haven't changed at all. Sorry, but that's the way I feel about it.
I think he's the one that made a fool of himself.
Well, they have done well for themselves. They got money. And I wanted to go up to see my grandchildren, one of whom I've never met, never seen. But to go up to that kind of hostility, you know, these people have tried to kill me. The only thing I'm trying to do is get the truth out to you. And let's see, we got 30 minutes. I'd like to kind of show people what we're up against here. I've got something here from actually this is from my guest on Monday. I was looking for something else. I didn't find this. But you need to understand, folks, your whole Bible, your churches, and I've tried to tell you this, Russell, you can back me up, Judeo-Christianity is not Christianity. Can we do this? You got something you want to add here? I want to play Eli James. I found that, and that's it.
Well, first of all, Judeo-Christianity is not Christianity. I repeat, I reiterate, it is not Christianity. It's a Judaic subcult. Because the teaching of Jesus, who was not a Jew, and I wish I could show you Pontius Pilate's diary. That's why you got to get that program so you could get me live on the air so they could see my handsome face and my gorgeous body. I will show them some books. One is Pontius Pilate, his diaries. Jesus was not a Jew.
He said Jesus was a bond.
The teachings of Jesus was not supposed to be a religion. It was purely Gnostic. Gnosticism is an alternative to religion, which clearly states, and it's older than religion. It teaches man could only be saved by saving himself with knowledge and applying that knowledge with wisdom and understanding and creative imagination. For the application of knowledge of knowledge is power. Paul, who you call Saint Paul, shame on you. You really haven't had taken, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, mesmerized, and mind-fucked. The devil you call St. Paul is in truth Paul of Taurus, who came out
call him by his real name.
With a cock and bull story.
Call him by his real name.
Of how he fell off a horse and was blinded by the light. I didn't know Manfred Mann was around that time to blind him by the light.
Call him by his real name. Russell, call him by his real name.
Yeah.
He wasn't Paul at all.
Paul.
He adopted that.
Saul
of Taurus.
Absolutely. Of Taurus.
He changed his name so the Israelites.
Many real Christians.
He changed his name so the real Israelites that he had been killing wouldn't kill him. Now let me share this. Let me share this with you folks. This is Eli James. He'll be my guest on Monday. He's the co-author of my book, A Mystery Babylon, and I call that a handbook for true Israelites. 2,000 years have passed. We're still trying to get the truth and get the deceivers out. Jesus pointed out 2,000 years ago, warned you about the Jews who say they're Jews, but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. Is that true?
Absolutely. And if you continue with John 8 verse 44, you will see Jesus said, he's speaking to the Pharisees, who were the Jews, the former Levite priests who converted to Phariseeism when they mixed Zoroastrianism with Torah Yahwehism during the Hebrewism, or Habaruism as it was originally called, during the Babylonian captivity. Jesus literally states, "Ye are of your father the devil, who was a liar and a murderer from the beginning." You see, as smart as the Jews are, and they are smart, they forgot to take that one out.
All right, let's play this.
Who the modern day Israelites are, or the Jews, if you kind of distinguish between the two. And so I'll bring him up. Come on up.
Okay. Thank you, David. As David was saying, my website is www.anglo-saxonisrael.com, and on that website there are many articles and videos referencing the Israelite people and the Jewish people and the distinctions between them. Now, of course, the vast majority of people today believe that Israel and the Jews are the same people, and that has never been true. That is, in fact, one of the biggest lies of history, namely the Jewish claim that they are the Israel of the Bible. In fact, we'll be referencing many quotations from Scripture, such as Revelation 2:9, Revelation 3:9, and 12:9, all of which tell us, for example, Revelation 2:9 says that there is a people who say they are Jews, are not, and do lie, but are the synagogue of Satan. And so we have to understand that there's great deception, monumental deception that has been taking place in the last 2,000 years, and we can say very specifically in the last 2,125 years, that a group of people who are non-Israelites, in fact, are Edomites and Canaanites, who have been masquerading, who have been pretending to be Israel for the last 2 millennia. And it's because of this extensive deception, this extensively long period of time, during which these Edomite Jews, and we'll be talking about the Edomite Jews throughout most of this video, that these Edomite Jews have been pretending to be Israel by, number one, adopting the culture, some aspects of the culture of ancient Israel and the house of Judah, and also by having claimed to author the Old Testament. The Old Testament, of course, was written by Hebrews, by Judahites primarily, although other members of other tribes were involved in that as well. But I can say categorically that not a single word of the Bible was written by a Jew. And that's because the Jews aren't Israelites and never were Israelites. In fact, the Sephardic Jews, as we're going to find out today, were actually members of the Canaanite Edomite tribe of Idumea and related peoples who were always at war with Israel. And we're going to be quoting prophecies from the Old Testament that state that the Edomites would one day covet the name of Israel and covet their land and take it over. And those are historical facts.
I want to interrupt that to point out that I've been telling you for the last 20 years that we are at war. And what is happening here, and here's where my sons don't know, they bought into the deception, they bought into the lies. We are at war. These people, these so-called Jews, as Benjamin Friedman, a real Jew, calls them, he calls them so-called Jews. They are still at war with us. Alex Jones is at war with me. When I exposed him, when I said something about Violet, his girlfriend, working for the Mossad, I became too dangerous to even talk to. All right, Eli, pick it back up.
That occurred just before the days of Christ. The Edomites did take over. They usurped the throne of Judah, and the man who did that was Herod, known as Herod the Great. And he was actually installed by his father Antipater and Julius Caesar. it was a coup. It was a usurpation of the kingdom of Judah. And that explains why Herod was so anxious to kill baby Jesus, because Herod, being an Edomite, knew very well that Jesus was the true heir to the throne of Judah, and that's why the Judahites were hated by the Edomites. And these Edomites knew that they were culturally different from the Israelites of the house of Judah in Judea in those days. In fact, the Judahite women protested on virtually a daily basis against King Herod, because they said, hey, Herod, he's not one of us, he's not a Judahite, he's an Edomite. And this aspect of the history of Judea during the intertestamental period and leading up to the days of Christ is utterly ignored by virtually all historians who are, and all biblical theologians, who are simply either unaware of the actual history of these days or who are actually covering up for the synagogue of Satan. So the major thrust of this video is going to be about the Edomite Jews, those Jews who lived side by side with the Israelites throughout biblical history. And we can demonstrate that these are two separate groups of people, two lines of descent. The Bible makes it very clear that there are two lines of descent and also continuous enemies throughout the existence of both lines of descent. And that continues even down to this day, as we will show. But before we get into the subject of the Edomites, we have to clear up one thing. In Christian identity, such pastors as Dr. Wesley Swift and Bertrand Comparet have been saying for decades that the Jewish people are not the Israel of the Bible. They're not the Israel of God. They're not the Israel of Yahweh. And that there are two distinct groups of people blended into one people, namely the Ashkenazi Jews and the Sephardic Jews. And typically, if you ask a Jew, well, what's the difference between a Sephardic Jew and an Ashkenazi Jew? They say, well, the Ashkenazis are European Jews, and the Sephardic Jews are Spanish Jews. But that doesn't explain where they came from, okay? To say that the Sephardic Jews came from Spain is not to explain where the Spanish Jews themselves came from. Well, we know they came from the Middle East. They came from the Middle East, they came from Palestine, many of whom wandered across northern Africa and actually were in cahoots with the Moors against the Christians of Spain, and were instigating the Moors to attack Christian Spain. So those Spanish Jews were actually the Sephardic Jews who came from the Middle East, who were actually the survivors of the Roman army's destruction of Jerusalem and the army under Titus, the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, and many of the wars that the Jews fought were against the Romans. So it was the Romans who destroyed the Temple and burned it to the ground, and basically spread the Jewish people from there far and wide. Okay, so that's the Jewish diaspora, or dispersion, as they call it, a diaspora.
All right, I'm going to stop that there. We've got a caller there, and when you, I want to get your comments. I can't hear you, sorry. Russell, what's going on here?
Yeah, you're talking to me. I thought you were talking to someone else. Go ahead.
We got a caller here, and I wanted to, whoops, nope, the caller dropped off. The caller had a blocked number, so we couldn't see who it was. So, never mind. Do you have any comments on what this Eli's had to say so far?
Well, he's correct, except for one thing. Jesus is not the heir of the throne to Judah, because he is not the Lion of Judah. He has nothing to do with Judah, which is now Judea, I should say, which is now called Israel. Jesus was not Jewish. Pontius Pilate clearly states it in his diaries. The Jews had to stop him, and how did they stop him? If you can't beat him, you join him. And he never died on the cross. If you read the Bruce Codex or the SQ Codex, or the Path of Life, you would find out that Jesus went into a 3-day astral projection. It's called a mystery meditation. And all the suffering that he went through during those 3 days, he did not feel on his body. However, when he awoke 3 days later, he did feel it. But the condition of Jesus, the real Jesus, not the emasculated, Judaicized Jesus that you've been taught to believe in, was so powerful and strong that he withstood the beating and lived on where many other martyrs couldn't. And then he went on to India, and he went on to many places, and eventually he died. In India, he was called Jesanabra. Folks, again, you've been fooled. You've been lied to. You've been brainwashed into thinking and believing, which is shameful, that something that is not true, a big, bold-faced lie, like the Holocaust, which the Jews claim 6 million Jews were killed when there was only 3.4 million or 2.4 million, I forget the figure, in all of Europe at the time. You got to wake up, folks. Jesus was not Jewish, and the Jews are not the chosen people. The original Jews were not even the original Jews, or the Israelites were not even the chosen people. They were chosen. Yes, they were indeed, and you could read that in the book of Deuteronomy. They were chosen by a false god, an archon, and Google it if you don't know the meaning, to root out and to pull down and destroy the nations. In fact, Jehovah, or Yahweh as I like to call him, because he should be pissed on, actually taught the ancient Israelites how to go into another nation and take it over. He had two different game plans, one if the nation was close, and the other if the nation was afar. And who copied that and wrote it almost verbatim, word for word? Nikolai Machiavelli in his book, The Prince. I would suggest you read the entire book of Deuteronomy and find out what a cruel, sadistic, hedonistic, psychopathic, sociopathic, reptilian being that Jehovah or Yahweh really was. In truth, Jehovah is a reptilian, Yahweh is a reptilian, and the grandson of Enlil that you could read about in Sumerian mythology. He was known as the moon god Sin, and he's known as the devil, and you could see it on my Facebook page. I have all that information because I am very well versed in this information. You could read Paul Tice's book. I forget the name of it. Jumping Jehovah. You could read Is Jehovah an Extraterrestrial? I forget the name. Forget who wrote that. More importantly, you could read The Shining Ones, but I doubt you'll get your hand on it because you may have to pay as much as $500 for it, brand new. I have the hardcover, and how I got it, I'm not even going to say, but I got it from a foreign country. I got it in Europe. And the book is by Christian and Joy O'Brien, two acclaimed archaeologists that discovered Babylon ziggurats. They literally prove that Jehovah was a 16-foot reptilian being. And you couldn't look upon his face because that's how ugly a motherfucker he really was. And I don't apologize for my profanity because when I'm talking about the profane, I use profanity. Of course, I mix it with bombastic phrases and ostentatious words because that's my style. Hit him over the head, in your face. If you can't accept the truth, get the fuck out of here. I don't need to be around pathetic, so-called normal, politically correct buttheads.
I feel the same way.
No, I know you do. Or we wouldn't be doing this show.
You know,
I don't expect people. I don't expect people all the people.
You've been fed this stuff all your life. It's hard to say, whoa, you mean My mother and father were wrong in what they taught me. My grandmother was wrong in what they taught me. It's hard to do. It's hard
Yeah,
to
it's like
watch.
they make you grow up. You better behave. God's going to punish you. Well, let me tell you something, folks. The real God never punished anybody. You punish yourselves through the law of action or reaction, which people mistakenly call karma. You're the one who causes it. You're responsible for every manifestation that occurs in your life. Oh, there are a few accidents, but you have the ability to circumvent those accidents. You could jump over the obstacles and roll with the punches and keep on keeping on, keep on pushing, but you don't. You quit. Because most of you have been conditioned to be fearful. You grew up on a lie, and now when the truth comes, you want to dust it off. Like Winston Churchill, who I don't like, because he sold out to the Jews, said, some people, or I should say, he said, everyone comes across the truth once in their life, but then they dust it off and go about their business. Because nobody wants to accept the truth. Nobody wants to take the red pill because it's a bitter pill to swallow. The truth is not so nice. However, once you accept the truth, you can learn to live with it and actually capitalize on it. So in the long haul, you're better off knowing the truth than to lie. And as far as your salvation, stop it, folks. The Savior you've been looking for is yourself. No one else is going to come. Jesus is not coming down to save you. The silver spaceships that Neil Young talked about in his great tune, I forget the name of it, came out in 1973, are not coming. It's all a dream. It's all a nonsense. There's no rapture. That's more bullshit. You want to save yourself, you got to make the effort. You got to baptize yourself and wash away all the dogma, all the deceit, all the chicanery, all the balderdash that you have been inculcated with over the years by your parents, grandparents, your misleaders in government, your deceivers in the Redeemer religions, which is a deception in itself, and by the mongrel dogs who taught you in the pubic system of indoctrination, which Clay likes to call the public fool system, which is not a system of education at all. It's a system of brainwashing for the purposes of control and the slavery of the human race. And if you doubt me, read Cheryl Nesbitt's great work. You may be able to get it online free, or see a video, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And America is dumb. I would say only 3 to 5% of the world is awake. And if you want to go to America, I would say you probably got less than 1% that's awake. Because America actually has the most haughty, condescending, dumbed down, conceited morons I ever saw in my entire life.
Look at it.
Americans are the laughing stock of the world.
Look at it like this, Russell. They were, your parents and grandparents probably, were dumbed down, and to the point that they allowed the Jews, the Jewish bankers, to come in here. They listened to Roosevelt. Mr. Roosevelt's going to save us all. Roosevelt forced you to go into the bank and take your gold in. You took it in. They gave you $13 or $16 an ounce for it, and immediately doubled it to $32. They doubled their money overnight because your parents were stupid to give it up. Well, it's the law. It's the law. Shortly after that, they took away your major #1 cash crop. That was hemp. Oh, it's the law. Can't grow it no more. It's the law. Yeah, you've been dumbed down. When are you going to take it back? It's reaching the point now. It's too late to take it back. They have got you locked up. They have got you brainwashed even more. They brainwashed my sons. Quit talking about the Jews, Dad. Quit talking about the Jews. They're the ones that stole the money. They're the ones that set up the competition for me and took me out of the picture, so I couldn't compete. I couldn't compete. And this is the nightmare. This is the insanity. This is the nightmare I talk about when I write about nightmares. You know, I'm not trying to go out and take anything from anyone. And the Liberty Village plan that I came up with, it was a good plan. They stole that from me. They took that from me. Supposed to be a good thing. And what Ron Finley is doing in L.A., I told you you could do it in every block, in every neighborhood. Grow food in your backyard, not grass. But they don't want you to do that. They want to, oh, somebody got raided. Oh, somebody got, oh, the police came in. Oh, you got to have a permit for that. You got to have a permit to grow food. I can't grow corn here instead of weeds. Does that make sense?
Well, you see, I have a little different attitude on it. I could do whatever the fuck I want, because I am who I am. I bow to no man or no law or regulation, and it's been that way since I was between 12 and 15 years old. I disobey, whether it's covertly or overtly, depending upon the situation. And because of the gift that I have gotten from the Holy Spirit, who is known to the wise as Pistis Sophia, I have luminous epinoia, the creative imagination to react and do what I do in a plethora or a myriad of different ways with wisdom and understanding what I'm doing that I got from the Holy Spirit. That's why Jesus said, blasphemy against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. Folks, obedience to civil government is the path to slavery. If that's your choice, hey, I'm an advocate of free will. Do what you will. That's the whole extent of the law. As Aleister Crowley said, another man who was demonized. You people out there still believe Thomas Edison discovered electricity when it was Nikolai Tesla. Shame on you for believing the crap that you got in the schools. Oh, you thought the schools educated you so you got a good job? A job? You're a fucking wage slave. And speaking of that, folks, like I've said many times, and Clay plays my recording on that, if you're looking to learn extra money from the home, working 15 minutes to an hour a day, placing ads either on Craigslist or on Backpage.com, call me, better yet, email me, leave me your phone number, I'll call you. My email is RJP as in Peter, P as in Peter again, APA at yahoo.com. That's RJP Papa at yahoo.com. And I'll show you how to do it. That is if you have the time, 15 minutes to an hour a day.
All right, let me
15 minutes will be fine as long as you live within the continental United States, no Alaska, no Hawaii, and no Puerto Rico.
Let me stop you for a second, because a friend of mine is on here. She goes by Unearth, and I think she's got it wrong here. She said this guy denies Jesus was who he says he was, then turns around and quotes him. I don't hear you saying that. Jesus, I follow...
But she doesn't know what she's talking about, because I'll tell you why. I don't deny Jesus. I deny that Jesus was Jewish.
That's all.
And he was not the Messiah, because, hold on, Messiah means warrior, priest, king. Jesus was not Jewish, he had nothing to do, and he came here to expose the tyranny, the chicanery, the debauchery, the heinous, the nefarious, and the insidious activities of the Jews. who are originally known as the peoples of the sea.
Or the Pharisees. They were the Pharisees, and Jesus railed against them.
That's later on.
You want to talk to Scumley? I got him.
No, fuck Scumley.
Okay.
I'd like to bitch slap Scumley.
I don't hear you denying that Jesus was a divine being. I think Jesus was in touch, like he told you, you can do what I do and more. No, I'm not getting him. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Jesus
Wait a minute. Whoever this asshole is keeps telling me that we want to talk to Scumley. No, I'm not doing it, and you're gone too. You're gone too. You asked me to bring Scumley on, you're gone. Scumley, you're gone. You're gone too.
Clay, give out Scumley's phone number again. Let's let him get harassed.
It's 3.
Let's play hardball.
No. He appreciates that. He likes these people calling him. No, I don't. Lynn thinks that you deny that he was the Son of God. I don't think that. I think I'm a son of God. You know.
Jesus was the son of the Christos, as you are, and she is, and I am. Unfortunately, most people don't know it. We are all connected. We are all one. Okay? We are all one. Jesus spoke the truth. She is brought up in the Judeo-Christian false religion, and she's brainwashed into thinking a certain way, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sure the fluoride in the water, the aluminum in the water, the chemtrails and the contrails in the air, the GMO foods that she doesn't even know she's eating, and the kosher foods that she doesn't know she's eating, the foods that were made in Israel, and Codex Alimentarius, and the pesticides in the food, have damaged the cerebral cortex of her brain. It's happened to many Americans. Jesus was not a Jew. He was the Son of God, not the Son of Yahweh or Jehovah, who was an archon. Jesus knew Jehovah was a demon, as did the Greeks, as did the ancients. In fact, the Greeks called him the demiurge, or Ialdabot, the blind, brain damage, that is, God, the false God, the archon, the reptilian. That's who Jehovah and or Yahweh is.
Jesus told us.
I have no desire to argue or debate with a moron.
Okay.
Tell him to go to YouTube and put into YouTube why most people can't wake up. If she thinks that I said Jesus was not divine, she's out of her mind.
Well, she says that apocryphal sources say otherwise, I'm afraid. That's her opinion.
Yeah, but I'm afraid that she should read the Bruce Codex or the SQ Codex, but I'm sure she can't afford it. Or the Path of Light.
All right. Well, I'm going to move on. Let's see what Eli. I didn't finish that. Let's go back to the house of Israel. About Judah, he talks about God's chosen. Let's see where he picks up.
But we know, and I want to refer you to other of our videos, the Migration of Israel videos, which prove that the 10 northern tribes, with large numbers of the 2 southern tribes, that is Judah and Benjamin, which accompanied them into Europe, they became known as the Caucasian people, and the Caucasian people are all descended from the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's covered in other videos on this website and on anglo-saxonisrael.com. So today, in this section, in this very first introduction, we're going to be talking about the Ashkenazim primarily and who they are. And I'm going to make some quotes here from Jews and from historians who tell us who these Ashkenazim really are. And they're not Israel. I can say categorically, without fear of contradiction, that the Ashkenazi Jews have no Israelite blood, no Judahite blood, no Hebrew blood, no Shemitic blood. That's right. The Ashkenazi Jews, who are up to 95% of the Jewish population in the world today, do not have a single drop of Shemitic blood in them. The fact is, most Ashkenazim are descended from three generals, from the Japhethites. Japheth was the brother of Shem, so a Japhethite cannot be a Shemite. And the Mongols and the Turks, who were part of the, I should put it this way, the Hittite kingdom that migrated north, who were absorbed by the Turkish Empire in early times, okay? So we have the Japhethites, the Mongols, and the Hittites, also known as Turks. Those three generals make up the Ashkenazi people, and there's no Shemitic blood in those people whatsoever. And I'm going to quote from Jewish authors and other historians that this is indeed a fact. For example, this in Titus, let's start with the Bible. Titus 1, verses 13 through 15. This witness is true, wherefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith. And of course he's talking about the Israelites, because the entire Bible is written to Israel. It's not written to the Jews or to any other people. Not giving heed to Jewish fables, so we're not to believe Jewish fables, and commandments of men, which is a direct reference to the Pharisees, who made up their own commandments in opposition to the laws of Yahweh, the law of God, that turn from the truth. Unto the pure all things are pure, but unto them that are defiled, and he's referring to the Pharisees here, and unbelieving is nothing pure, but even their mind and conscience is defiled. So this is what Paul is saying about these Pharisees who invented the religion called Judaism. And we'll bring this out later on, that Judaism is not the religion of the Old Testament. Judaism is actually a recently invented religion just before the days of Christ. And this is what Paul is trying to tell us, that these people have a defiled conscience, and that their traditions are the traditions of men, they're not the traditions of the Bible. Okay? In his book, The Outline of History, H.G. Wells tells us, quote, "It is highly probable that the bulk of the Jews' ancestors never lived in Palestine at all, which witnesses the power of historical assertion over fact." What is H.G. Wells trying to tell us? Well, what I just explained, that the Jewish people, the Ashkenazi Jews, none of their ancestors ever lived in Palestine. None of their ancestors are Hebrews, Shemites, Judahites, or Israelites. They are completely different people who adopted the religion of Judaism around 740 AD. But to convert to a religion does not convert your genetics or your DNA from one group to another. People, Judeo-Christians ask me, well, what difference does all this make? What difference does it make if the Jewish people aren't really Israel at all? Well, the fact is that the Jewish claim to the land of Palestine and the genocidal tactics that they're using against the Palestinian people and the wars they're making in the Middle East based on their claim to the territory from the river of Egypt to the Tigris and Euphrates, namely Eretz Israel, as the Jews call it, it's a fraud. Since those people are not even Israelites, what they're doing in the Middle East is totally illegitimate. It's part of the great deception that we find in Revelation 12:9, which tells us that there's a beast that will deceive the whole world. Now, I have never found a Judeo-Christian minister to even address that verse as to who it might be or what it might be that's deceiving the entire world. Well, if the Jews are claiming to be Israel and they're not, well, they're deceiving the entire world with that lie. From Missing Links Discovered in the Syrian Tablets, a book by E. Raymond Capt, he says, "A great majority of the Jews today are Semites only in speech," which means that the fact that they still speak Hebrew, that some of them speak Hebrew, which is, even that is only a modern version of ancient Hebrew. The Bible is written in Paleo-Hebrew, and the modern Jewish version of it is completely different, and it's hard to say whether they're actually pronouncing the words correctly or putting their sentences correctly together. It's modern Hebrew. It's not the same as the Hebrew that was employed to write the Bible. Okay? Now, Professor A.N. Polyak of Tel Aviv University has this to say. This would mean, since the Ashkenazi people are not Israelites, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga. Not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, because they occupied southern Russia in 740 AD when they converted to Judaism. Once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race. Well, it was earlier the cradle of the Aryan race. And that genetically they are more related to the Hun, Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Let me repeat this. If all of this stuff about the Ashkenazi Jews is true, and it is, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Caucasus, from the Volga. And that genetically they are more related to the Hun, Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Again, this is Professor A.N. Polyak, Tel Aviv University. I'd like to point out a book that has created a sensation in the Jewish world, and I'm not so sure that the Judeo-Christian world has taken notice of it. They probably haven't, because, as I said, they don't seem to care who is posing as Israel and who really is Israel. But Shlomo Sand, The Invention of the Jewish People. This book, and there's other books that have been written like this lately, that talk about the fact that the Ashkenazi people are not Israelites at all, that their origin is in a non-Israelite people in southeastern Europe, the steppes of Central Asia, from Eastern Europe into Western Asia. That's where they actually originate from.
Let me grab one coffee.
All right, let me stop that.
The Power of Prophecy talks about, this is the April 2013 issue, talks about the study that was done in John.
All right, we'll have more of Eli on Monday. Okay, we've still got 45 minutes here. My friend Lynn, she left. She thinks this is that you're the reason my listenership is down. I don't know that it's down at all. I don't know. I mean, my son's dropped off. I don't know. You know, sometimes though I wonder. Again, it's like I said, when the accident happened, we had answer. Liberty Villages, grow food in your backyard. Communicate with me. Here's my email, here's my phone numbers. Nobody does. Few people do. I did have a couple of people that responded to the email I sent out. I sent it out to old people that I haven't talked to in a while. And I did get some responses. Yeah, glad to see you're still alive. But you know, we've had lots of different types of guests. We've had you know, Paul Pantone talking about the Geet device.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on what Eli said.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, Eli is a very erudite and learned man, but he forgot one thing, and he misused the wrong term in one thing. Hold on, let me get this phone straight now. Which is this: the Jews, the Ashkenazi, the peoples of Ashkenaz, the peoples of the sea, the descendants of the Burghers and the Mayas, the Huns, The Turco-Finnish Mongoloids did not convert to Judaism in 740 AD. 40 AD. They converted to Talmudism because Judaism wasn't used as a term for the religion until the 17th century. It was called Talmudism. It started out with Torah Yahwehism or Haverism or Hebrewism. It became Phariseeism during the Babylonian captivity when they mixed, when the Levite priests of Torah Yahwehism mixed their teachings with the teachings of a corrupted form of Zoroastrianism to come out with Phariseeism. It then became Talmudism when they wrote the Babylon Talmud, which they went back to, I believe, in the 1st or 2nd century A.D. It was called Talmudism. Then it became Judaism in the 17th century. And the reason it became, to use the word Judaism, for those who really don't know and want to know, not because they were trying to identify with Judea, they were on the surface, that's the mislead. But it came from the name Judenstrasse Street in Germany, where the Jewish or the Ashkenazi Mongoloid ghetto was. So they called it Judaism from the word Jude, Judenstrasse Street. That's the facts, folks. All the Bibles have been rewritten and corrupted many times. The Bible is not the Word of God. It is the word of a false God and false people who want to make you think that they are the chosen people of that God. And that's the big problem we have to overcome, because they've been conditioned. The masses, who are asses, have been conditioned over the years to believe the Bible is the Word of God, or not to believe it at all, to believe in a doctrine of evolution, which, as someone once said, they have as much chance of evolving from a fish as an explosion taking place in a print factory, and out comes an unabridged Webster's dictionary. Folks, I mean, really, if you want to stay asleep, and I don't think the people who listen to this show want to stay asleep. I think you have legitimate listeners who are awake, fully awake, half awake, three-quarters awake, and also shills like Scumley and other people that are just here to spoof on us and to prank us. Hold on, I think the coffee's ready. I had to reheat it.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Russell Pappalardo is my guest today. Talking about the Jewish heritage, where it comes from. Are they the Jews of the Bible? No. Ashkenazis? Yes. All right. Yeah, just looking at a few different types of vehicles. I think we're going to be going pretty soon to electric cars. simply, if nothing else, why do we need to support the oil companies? And hopefully we'll be able to build those cars out of hemp. Alright. You back yet, Russell? Here's somebody else. Andreas Fagerbeck. He says, I think that Friends of Israel should, as often as possible, use the term Judea and Samaria and not the West Bank. The name of the area was Judea be Samaria. From biblical times until 1950, when Jordan occupied the area, renaming it the West Bank. We must repeat these facts as often as possible. Another fact is that Jews lived there for ages until Jordan ethnically cleaned the area in 1948 and forced all of the Jews out of Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem. The lie about the occupation has been repeated so many times, people start believing it. I'm wondering what you guys think about this. Shouldn't the Friends of Israel stick to the truth and not try to be popular and politically correct? The following video entitled Israel-Palestinian Conflict, The Truth About the West Bank, explains the fact that there's no such thing as an Israeli occupation, they say. Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Denny Avalon, explains the historical facts relating to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The video explains where the term West Bank's occupied territory and 67 borders originated. This means this could be simply Israeli propaganda. Let's see here while I'm getting my coffee. Andreas Fagerback, evidently. The truth about the West Bank.
Often on the news we hear the terms occupied territories, 67 borders, and illegal settlements. And the story we usually hear sounds very simple. During the Six-Day War, Israel captured the West Bank from the Palestinians, refused the United Nations' demand to retreat, and illegally built settlements. But is that really the case? Let's try to understand the situation a little bit better. We'll start with a simple but extremely important question. From whom did Israel capture the West Bank? From the Palestinians? No. In 1967, there was no Arab nation or state by the name of Palestine. Actually, was there ever? Israel took over the West Bank from Jordan in an act of self-defense, after Jordan joined a war launched by Egypt and Syria to destroy Israel. Oh, by the way, destroying countries is rather illegal. The United Nations back in 1967 rejected repeated Arab and Soviet attempts to declare Israel as the aggressor. Security Council Resolution 242 did not demand a unilateral Israeli withdrawal. Rather, the United Nations called for negotiating a solution which would leave Israel with secure and recognized boundaries. In effect, defensible borders. But wait a second. What was Jordan doing in the West Bank in the first place? What was its legal justification? Well, Jordan had the, you know what? It had no legal justification. Jordan simply occupied it during its previous attempt to destroy the newly established state of Israel in 1948. changing the commonly accepted name Judea and Samaria to the West Bank. But that did not really convince anybody. And almost no one recognized the legality of Jordan's occupation, not even any of the other Arab states. So, if Jordan had no legal claim to the land, and a Palestine did not exist, whose territory is it? Let's go a little further back in time. Don't worry, not to the days of the Bible, only about 100 years.
You still there?
Until 1917, the Ottoman Empire occupied the whole region. After losing in World War I, the Ottomans relinquished their 500-year control to the Allied forces, which decided to divide the old empire into countries. Britain's foreign minister, Lord Balfour, recognized the Jewish people's historical right to their homeland. A small area, equivalent to about 0.5% of the Middle East, was designated for this purpose. Britain received a mandate from the League of Nations to promote the establishment of a Jewish homeland. But wait a second, do you realize what happened? The Jewish homeland originally included not only the West Bank, but also the East Bank of the Jordan River. I guess you cannot say the Jewish people have not accepted some painful compromises already. Anyway, the League of Nations recognition of a Jewish homeland, which includes the West Bank, was reaffirmed by the United Nations after the Second World War. With the British mandate ending, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181 recommended the establishment of two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The Jews accepted it and went on to create the State of Israel, while the Arabs refused the compromise and launched a war to destroy the newly established Jewish state. Resolution 181, a non-binding recommendation in the first place, remained with no legal stand. At the end of the war, a ceasefire line was formed, where the Israeli and Arab forces stopped fighting. At the insistence of the Arab leaders, this line was defined as having no political significance. So, although this line is commonly referred to as the 1967 border, it is not from 1967, and it was never an international border. This is why a more exact legal definition for the West Bank, according to international law, is really the same as in so many other areas where there are or were territorial disputes, but which are not defined as occupied. For example, Zubarah, the Tams Islands, the Western Sahara, amongst many others. They're not considered occupied territories, but rather disputed territories. So, let's return for a moment to our illustration and examine the complete chain of events. Israel's presence in the West Bank is the result of a war of self-defense. The West Bank should not be considered occupied because there was no previous legal sovereign in the area, and therefore the real definition should be disputed territory. The 1947 partition plan has no current legal standing, while Israel's claim to the land was clearly recognized by the international community during the 20th century. That is why the presence and construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank should not be considered illegal. These are not just my own opinions. They are based on conclusions made by world-renowned jurists like Professor Eugene Rastow, Justice Arthur Goldberg, and Stephen Schwebel, who headed the International Court of Justice. So what's the solution for the dispute over the West Bank? Unfortunately, there is no magic solution. But the only way a solution will ever be reached is if we base our negotiations on legal and historical facts. So please, let's stop using the terms occupied territories and 67 borders. They're simply not politically correct.
Yeah, right. The truth about the West Bank as far as Israel is concerned. You know, it's not the borders that bother me. It's the burnt children. It's the fire bombs, the firebombing of schools that really bothers me. All right, what do we got here? Okay, this one's down. I've got up here the chart of Israel's tribes, and you know what? As a born and raised Texan, I'm losing interest in that too. We don't go out and kill Indians. We don't go out and kill Cherokees. We don't argue with each other about this kind of thing. Just ain't happening. Eli, I'm going to let you finish. Russell, are you still around? Okay. What did we have here? Let me look here. Alright, let's see, John DeNugent sent me something. Let's check that out. They're still trying to exonerate sex killer Leo Frank. See what that is. Former Georgia Supreme Court Justice Leigh Ward Sears speaks at the memorial service for Leo Frank Sunday, August 16, 2015. Death threats to jury claimed by Jews never happened, were invented by Frank partisans years later. Okay, don't feel like going there. Don't feel like going there.
A single verse in Zechariah contains an extraordinary but little-known prophecy. Foretold over 2,500 years ago, it will be fulfilled very soon. It explains why the now deeply strained relationship exists between the United States and Israel, where there was once an unwavering alliance. World leaders, the media, and even supposed prophecy experts don't know this prophecy. This broadcast brings meaning to now faltering relations, along with why these two nations have enjoyed such a special and enduring friendship. Opening with bad news, the prophecy ends with the most wonderful good news. The highest drama is playing out toward breakup between America and Israel with other Western nations involved.
Let's hope.
This cataclysmic event will soon rock America, Israel, and the West. One shocking event will first galvanize the whole world's attention. Shortly after will come the full blow-up a complete rupture that is visible everywhere. You need to know what is coming and why. We are not political, nor do we take sides, ever. What follows is about history and prophecy, not politics. After watching this unique broadcast, you will never see the relationship between America and Israel the same. This will be among the most important 28 minutes of your life.
The world to come. The Restored Church of God presents David C. Pack, author of 80 books and booklets, editor-in-chief of the Real Truth magazine, read by countless and growing numbers in every nation and territory of the world. In a violent age full of war, famine, pollution, disease, disasters, and economic uncertainty, and ever-worsening bad news, answering life's greatest questions straight from the Bible and announcing the wonderful good news of the world to come. And now, David C. Pack.
We open with one verse. In the context of the end time, God says he will break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Almost everyone believes ancient Israel and Judah, the Jews, are the same. Yet two entities are described here. Brotherhoods require at least two brothers. Israel and Judah are in fact separate peoples. Few know that most of the tribes of Israel became lost to themselves in the world. Judah did not. This story involves both recent and ancient history. First, recent history. America and Israel have always stood by each other for better or worse. This alliance has been especially significant for Israel given its hostile neighbors. Only 2 of 22 Arab nations have formally recognized it. Through the decades, the pressures of wars, terrorist acts, differing religious ideologies, politics, and conflicting personalities have tugged at the ties that have bound America and Israel. However, the relationship has weathered every storm. United States presidents of both political parties have long championed America's special relationship with the Jewish people. But new challenges are testing the relationship. Distrust has been growing over recent years. Headlines reveal the now enormous rift. As White House Netanyahu's spar-over speech to Congress, the gloves come off. Netanyahu's speech will poke U.S. President in the eye, warn Israeli diplomats. Best foes forever. What really divides Obama and Netanyahu? Netanyahu's Iran speech in Congress is a recipe for an explosive U.S.-Israel clash. Netanyahu says West is comatose, delusional in face of today's Nazis, Iran. And the United States will not support Israel in the UN. With Israel election over, Netanyahu likely to remain thorn in Obama's side. The open loathing between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu just got worse. And finally, Netanyahu spat in our face, White House officials said. Two big points of contention have arisen and festered. One, the Palestinian people and new settlements within disputed areas of a future Palestinian state, and two, how to deal with Iran's nuclear program. To Israel, settlement building means providing housing for growing communities. To America and much of the world, these projects are a sign that Israel will not budge in peace negotiations with the Palestinians. In August 2013, an article in The Hill reported the U.S. State Department criticized Israel for approving 1,200 new settlement homes on disputed lands on the eve of resuming long-stalled peace talks, saying, "We do not accept the legitimacy of continued settlement activity." The settlement issue remains unresolved and continues to create problems between America and Israel. In early 2015 came this. The U.S. criticized Israel's publication of tenders for 450 new settlement housing units, with State Department spokeswoman saying the move was deeply concerning and would further isolate Israel. Worse is Iran. Its leadership repeatedly vows to wipe Israel off the map. Israel has contemplated striking Iran's nuclear sites as a matter of survival for the tiny nation. Israel believes diplomacy has failed and the time for action is approaching. Meanwhile, America aggressively pursued a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear program. In September 2013, President Obama phoned Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, a first between leaders of these nations since 1979. This led to extensive negotiations to halt Iran's nuclear program involving China, France, Russia, the UK, and Germany, led by the United States. Agreement was reached July 14th. The next day's headline of the Wall Street Journal read, "Iran deal ignites fierce fight," with photos of President Obama, President Rouhani, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Israelis stand almost completely united against the agreement. Mr. Netanyahu has long been an outspoken critic of the Iran deal, and tensions between Washington and Jerusalem grew much worse when he addressed the U.S. Congress about Iran in March. Just before, an Associated Press article outlined how the speech greatly worsened the rocky relationship. For 6 years, President Barack Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been on a collision course over how to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions, a high-stakes endeavor both men see as a centerpiece of their legacies. The coming weeks will put the relationship between their countries to one of its toughest tests. Netanyahu is bound for Washington for an address aimed squarely at derailing Obama's cherished bid for a diplomatic deal with Tehran. At the same time, Secretary of State John Kerry and other international negotiators will be in Switzerland for talks with the Iranians, trying for a framework agreement before a late March deadline. The article continued with more recent history. Stopping Iran from building a nuclear bomb has become a defining challenge for both Obama and Netanyahu, yet one they have approached far differently. Also, the White House was furious when Netanyahu's government defied Obama and announced plans to construct new housing units in East Jerusalem while Biden was visiting Israel in 2010. Additional housing plans that year upended U.S. efforts to restart peace talks between the Israelis and Palestinians. The tension between Obama and Netanyahu was laid bare in an unusually public manner during an Oval Office meeting in 2011. In front of a crowd of journalists, the Prime Minister lectured Obama at length on Israel's history and dismissed the president's conditions for restarting peace talks. The public disagreements go on, including anger from the U.S. administration over statements Netanyahu made before his re-election that some think cast doubt on his commitment to a two-state solution. The result is many questioning how long the bond between Israel and the U.S. can hold. How much longer will Israel depend on America's approval for its decisions? How long will Israel wait before it feels it must act independently for its survival? And how long before America no longer supports Israel in the face of mounting pressure from the United Nations and European Union? To understand what Bible prophecy says about these brother nations, we must look to their pasts. Most know nothing about the true reason behind the connection these nations share. While both were built on Judeo-Christian values, millions don't realize God's Word plainly reveals their shared origin. The relationship began long before 1948, in fact, thousands of years ago. This is where ancient history enters. The world's greatest scholars don't know what happened to the tribes of Israel, one of which became the United States. And they don't know why it happened. The last picture in the Bible is Israel carried away into Assyria, only to disappear into history. How do historians and theologians explain this mystery? They make the great wrong assumption that all Israelites are Jews. This is not true. First, the Jews are only 1/12 of Israel. They sprang from Jacob's son Judah. There were 11 other sons. This basic understanding has become lost to the world, Jews included. Most think the term Jews is synonymous with all the tribes of Israel because they never investigate what the Bible actually says. The very first place the term Jews is found describes a war occurring between the Jews and Israel. Let's read it. Pekah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, king of Judah, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria and drove the Jews from Elath. This was not Jews fighting Jews. Most people have no idea Israel had become divided into different nations, two separate kingdoms. When King Solomon died, Israel rebelled against oppressive taxes he had imposed. His son Rehoboam was advised to reduce taxes to stop a revolt developing under a high-ranking leader named Jeroboam, appointed by Solomon. Instead, Rehoboam listened to younger advisors who told him to raise taxes. The result? 10 tribes rebelled, leaving only Judah and Benjamin loyal to Rehoboam. These tribes pulled away from Jerusalem, their capital, much like the Old South seceded from the American Union in 1861. Two kingdoms emerged, the House of Israel in the north and House of Judah in the south, with separate capitals, Samaria, Israel, and Jerusalem, Judah. I live in Ohio, one of 50 American states. While I am an American, as are all Ohioans, not all Americans are Ohioans. Some are Californians, others New Yorkers or Floridians, and so on. The point? All Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. Jews form a small percent of the total Israelites. After the 12 tribes split, Jeroboam led the northern 10 tribes. He consolidated his kingdom, ensuring it would never reunite with Judah and Benjamin. And he created a new religious system to distance his tribes from worshiping at Jerusalem. Notice, and the Israelites left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made molten images and served Baal. Those following Jeroboam worshiped the pagan Baal, the lord of the sun, or sun god. Jeroboam was the only king in Israel's history to actually force the people to sin. Notice again, Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them. Their chief sins were Sabbath breaking and idolatry. It was these that put them into slavery. The result? The Lord removed Israel out of his sight. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria. This was 721 to 718 BC, with Assyria carrying them far from their homeland. Read 2 Kings 17 and verse 6. Some generations later, the Babylonian or Chaldean Empire came to power under Nebuchadnezzar. They entered Judah and slowly took Jewish captives to what is now Iraq through the period from 604 to 585 BC. Soon after Israel's captivity began, the Assyrians migrated to northern Europe and settled in what is now modern Germany. They took most of their Israelite slaves with them, eventually allowing them to migrate further north and west and to regain independence. They settled in northwestern Europe, including the British Isles and Scandinavia. A central question arises. How did the house of Israel become lost to themselves and to the world? What happened? There is an all-important reason the 10 tribes lost their identity and Judah did not. God made a special covenant with Israel in Exodus 31 regarding his Sabbath. He explained that his purpose was that the Sabbath sanctifies those who keep it, setting them apart as belonging to or being owned by God. In the briefest terms, those who observe the Sabbath are signified as God's people. They are also publicly identified as people who keep the commandments. Since most nations outlaw stealing, murder, lying, or perjury, etc., obedience to most of the other commandments doesn't identify one as God's servant. The Sabbath does. It is a sign that people are of God, since no human would ever think or choose to keep this law without it having been revealed by God. The story behind Israel's loss of identity is astonishing and known to almost none for millennia. Yet these modern nations need never have lost sight of their identity. A choice they made caused this. While people denigrate and sneer at the Sabbath as merely Jewish, it is binding on far more people than the small number who descended from Judah. Israel stopped keeping God's Sabbath and lost the national sign that identified them. While the modern nations of both the West and Judah have fallen into many other national sins that have caused God to pull away and remove his blessings, it was the Sabbath that preserved their identity. Once in captivity, they ceased functioning as a nation, with a king and a government. Eventually, many took on the Assyrian language, losing track of their native Hebrew tongue. They were slaves who became lost to history. Even historians no longer recognize them. But the modern world does know who the Jews are. Why? They retained the Sabbath. They don't keep it holy and as God instructed, but they have not switched to Sunday as have professing Christians. They have generally retained the Sabbath, so they know who they are. As one historian put it, more than the Jews having kept the Sabbath has kept the Jews. Amazingly, almost no one talks or wonders about the identity of the other tribes. Yet today they number between 500 and 600 million. These nations have been deceived into believing themselves Gentiles. They're not. They are Israelitish brothers of the Jews. For instance, America is the tribe of Manasseh, and Britain descends from Ephraim, Joseph's sons. Notice Genesis 48. Joseph said unto his father, Jacob, Not so, my father, for this Manasseh is the firstborn. Put your right hand upon his head. He was blessing them. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother, Ephraim, modern Britain, shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations, the British Empire. And he blessed them that day, saying, In you shall Israel bless, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Israel's birthright was not just general to both grandsons. Separate blessings came to each. The great, wealthy, dominant single nation of Genesis 35:11 would descend and grow from Manasseh, America. The even greater, wealthier, more dominant company of nations, here called a multitude of nations, would spring from Ephraim, once known as Great Britain. The promise of enormous material prosperity, possession of their enemies' gates, enjoyment of the fatness of the earth, and other physical blessings were to go to Manasseh and Ephraim, America and Britain today. It is America and Britain that embody the blessings to and name of Israel more than the other tribes. Much more than simple friends or allies, the facts of history reveal the United States and Middle Eastern nation of Israel are brothers. This explains their long, unique relationship. To learn more about the incredible history of the United States and Britain and what the Bible reveals about their future, read my book, America and Britain in Prophecy. With this background, we're ready to more closely examine Zechariah's prophecy. Zechariah is one of the most venerated prophets in Israel today. I've twice been to his tomb in Jerusalem. Incredibly, although he's honored by modern Jews, he was put to death by Jews of his time right in front of the Second Temple. Today, almost no one in Israel talks of his many prophecies, never mind understands them. Yet there sits his very prominent tomb. Chapter 11 is also not discussed today, even among supposed prophecy experts. There have been a few crazy opinions about it, but all of them make no sense and miss the truth of what God plans to do. The two main elements in Zechariah 11 are summarized in what are staffs that God calls beauty, or more correctly grace, and bands. Let's read verse 7. I took unto me, God says, two staves. The one I called beauty, or grace, and the other I called bands. And I fed, the Hebrew is shepherded, the flock, his people. God describes himself as lifting two staffs together, one depicting his end-time church, the other the modern tribes of Israel. He intends to address two great problems at once. His divided flock is to be unified. The nations of Israel are scheduled to be divided. God plans to bring unity where there was division, and division where there was unity. The prophecy actually begins in verse 3. Let's read and learn how. There is a voice of the howling of the shepherds, for their glory is spoiled. A voice of the roaring of young lions, for the pride of Jordan is spoiled. The first half of this verse relates to God's people and involves the staff grace, an unrelated subject. The second half speaks to Judah and bands. In Genesis 49:9, God depicts the Israelite tribe of Judah as a lion's whelp, or young lion. Young lions here refers to Israeli officers and other officials in anguish over loss of support, friendship, and political connection from the rest of the modern nations of Israel, but chiefly America. Roaring means a rumbling or moan, roaring. A powerful army belonging to a small but proud nation will see its pride spoiled. Now all-important verse 14, which becomes another proof Israel and Judah are not the same. God says, "Then I cut asunder my other staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel." Verse 14 is so straightforward it requires little explanation. There is a bond between tiny Judah and the modern Western nations constituting the other Israelite tribes. It is this verse that explains the shocking headlines we saw. But God foretold a time when this relationship would be broken by Him. Key terms shed light on what God will do. Cut asunder means to fell a tree or to destroy. Obviously, if someone cuts down a tree, they have destroyed it. Think. People use axes to fell trees. It takes many blows depending on the tree's age and size. The brotherhood between the U.S. and Judah is at least 67 years old, tracing to America's 1948 recognition of Israel, or more accurately, 4,000 years old. This is an old tree. It has taken many blows to have it now near collapse. The word translated bands means a twisted cord. God describes an unraveling relationship with one strand after another being cut. This sundering did not happen all at once, but gradually over time. Yet there will come one moment when God will very obviously snap His staff bands. Notice it is